Haverford College has released its class of 2028 profile. Let's dig into it. My name is Craig Meister. I'm a college admissions coach. You can learn more about me and how you can work with me one-on-one throughout the entire college admissions process on my website, which is collegemeister.com. And if you're interested in learning about whether or not you are or your student is on track for selective college admission in the United States of America, visit areyouontracktogetin.com. Again, that's areyouontracktogetin.com, at which you will complete a free 3-minute assessment. Your results will be emailed to you right away, and they will help you clarify whether or not you are or your student is on track for selective college admission in the United States of America. So in comparing the class of 2027 profile at Haverford to the class of 2028 profile at Haverford, we have slight changes, and it is important to illuminate for you, especially if you're applying to Haverford, how these changes may or may not matter. I mean, frankly, they're probably statistical blips. For the class of 2027 at Haverford, in their class of 2027 profile, Haverford reported that it received 6,393 applications. Of those students, 825 were admitted, and ultimately 374 enrolled. Haverford is a small college. The overall admit rate is something they report publicly on their profile. Of course, we could dig into sort of what the actual real admissions rates are vis-a-vis ED1, ED2, and regular, but the overall admit rate for the class of 2027 at Haverford was 12.9%, and the yield is a pretty respectable 45.5%. That's, because they do, of course, rely heavily on 2 ED rounds. Geography-wise, we see that they come from all over to go to Haverford. 34 states were represented, DC, Puerto Rico, and 28 countries as well. Now, comparing that, let's go dig in now to the class of 2028 profile. There were 7,341 applications. Now that is more. That is not only more, that is basically 1,000 more than just the year before. 825 were accepted to the class of 2027, but 909 were accepted to the class of 2028. And ultimately, 391 are enrolling this August at Haverford. That compares to 374 last year. The overall admit rate, as a result, actually goes down to 12.4% compared to 12.9% last year. But again, that number is an average number because of the ED rounds and the regular round. And then the overall yield for the class of 2028 is 43%, so it's slightly lower than 45.5% last cycle. Geography-wise, again, we have a situation where basically, it's not so dissimilar. Roughly 43% of the students both years are coming from the Mid-Atlantic. That's a hefty percentage. The Pacific got actually a notable increase. It went from about 8.2% the class before to 13% for the class of 2028. So let's take a look at the background as reported by Haverford, the demographics, digging in a little deeper beyond geography. Last year, for the class of 2027, 52.5% identified as people of color, including 10% Black/African American, 12% Latino, and 29.6% Asian/Asian American. So for the class of 2028, the number did dip just a bit. It went from 52.5% to 48.3%. African American and Black went down to 8.2% from 10% the year before. Latino went to 11% from 12% the year before. So these are slight dips. And Asian American went from 29.6% the year before to 27%. So they all went down somewhat. The reason I'm bringing this up, I'll get to in a minute. Speaking a language other than English at home this year, 32% are speaking a language other than English at home, whereas last year was 31%. So we're not far off at all. Uh, very, very steady. I mean, it's sort of like being on a plane and you're flying at 36,000 feet. Now you're flying at 35,000 feet. You know, things happen. You have to go down a little bit, up a little bit because of pressure or other planes or other things that the air traffic control are doing to you. But ultimately, this is not much. It's still a pretty smooth flight here. 22.5% of students in the class of 2028's parents did not attend college. That was 25.1% last year. Overall, 10.5% are first generation to college this year. That was 11% last year. And they had 20 Questbridge matches in the class of 2027. They had 20 Questbridge matches in the class of 2028. So again, what you're seeing is a lot of statistical steadiness here. Overall class rank, 94.1% were in the top 10% of their high school class in the class of 2028, and 98.8% were in the top 20% of their high school class. And Haverford admits that around 45% of enrolling students in the class of 2028 did not choose to submit test scores with their application. But in terms of the actual top 10% of the class, 96.2% were in the top 10% of their class for the class of 2027, and 99% were in the top 20% of their class for the class of 27. So those numbers have gone down a little bit, obviously, for the class of 2028, as I just showed you. So the reason I showed you this is that, again, Haverford was very out front in being upset with the Supreme Court of the United States of America after their affirmative action ruling. Let me read. The following message was sent to Haverford students, faculty, and staff on Thursday, June 29th, 2023. Friends, today the U.S. Supreme Court handed down its decisions in a pair of much-awaited cases centering on the consideration of race in college admissions. The plaintiffs sought to end affirmative action programs that many schools, including Haverford, have long used in our effort to enroll a diverse student population on campus. Haverford was among a number of colleges and universities that joined an amicus brief in support of the consideration of race as one of many possible factors in admissions processes. In their decisions, the court determined that race-conscious admissions programs at Harvard and the University of North Carolina are unconstitutional. Writing for the court's majority, notes the Chronicle of Higher Education summary of the cases. I don't know why they had to quote a publication at Haverford. They're supposed to be erudite people. They should have just gone right to the primary source. But they're quoting a secondary source here. Chief Justice John G. Roberts Jr. said that policies that claim to consider an applicant's race as one of many factors, among many factors, are in fact violating the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. The decision reverses decades of legal precedent. Again, that's the article's statement, affirming that a diverse student body is a compelling state interest, a stance that had allowed colleges to use race-conscious admissions to reach that goal, end quote. Again, why that is being quoted, a newspaper article in Wendy Raymond, who was the president of Haverford at the time, little letter here. I don't know why they didn't just go right to well, I do know why, but they wanted to go to a secondary source, which again, it's interesting that an educational institution would do that, but whatever. But let's keep reading. The effect of these rulings will likely mirror what has happened in states that have imposed race-based prohibitions upon their colleges and universities admissions processes. There will be a meaningful and negative change in the diversity of student populations. As Associate Justice Sonia Sotomayor said in her dissent, quote, and now they're quoting this dissent directly, the devastating impact of this decision cannot be overstated. The majority's vision of race neutrality will entrench racial segregation in higher education because racial inequality will persist so long as it is ignored, end quote. Now here back to the Haverford letter directly, we are deeply disappointed in and disagree with these rulings. As we made clear in an email to campus on May 2nd, we want to affirm for all members of the greater Haverford community, students, faculty, staff, alumni, and families, that the college is unwavering in its commitment to equitable access to education and to the essential nature of diversity in the collegiate experience in and out of the classroom, and to the responsibility to build diversity across our community. Notably, the court has prescribed an approach to admissions that is grounded in an individual's qualities. As Justice Robert wrote, quote, students must be treated based on a student must be treated based on his or her, she didn't even quote it right. She could have said a student, but again, the way she wrote the letter, it's odd. It should say a student, and quote, must be treated based on his or her experiences as an individual, not on the basis of race, end quote. Haverford's approach to education from admission through graduation is marked by exactly that, a focus on the individual. That's somewhat contradictory to what she said earlier, which is they've been depending on affirmative action in their decisions for years. The decisions also leave room for colleges like Haverford to consider how race has impacted an applicant's life should an applicant raise the issue. The ruling notes, quote, nothing prohibits universities from considering an applicant's discussion of how race affected the applicant's life so long as that discussion is concretely tied to a quality of character or unique ability that the particular applicant can contribute to the university, end quote. Haverford is, of course, committed to compliance with the law. We are confident that we will be able to continue our holistic approach to evaluating admissions applications, a process that strives to understand each candidate as an individual and in the fullness of their life experiences and contexts. As our recently completed strategic plan, Haverford 2030, makes clear, we will continue to assert the essential importance of diversity, equity, inclusion, and access to our mission and our ability to provide the best liberal arts education possible. The Supreme Court's decision will create challenges for Haverford. We have been working steadily and thoughtfully ahead of the court's ruling to consider how our approaches in multiple areas, including admission, financial aid, and student life, could be made to align with the court's rulings, or with court rulings. We are confident in Haverford's ability to navigate the road ahead in ways that are consistent with our mission and values as we operate within the law. Sincerely, Wendy Raymond, President, Jess Lord, Vice President and Dean of Admission and Financial Aid, and Nikki Young, Vice President for Institutional Equity and Access. All lowercase, by the way, those titles. That's quite interesting. So here we go. Why am I sharing all this to you? I want you to know that in 2023, the class of 2024 at Haverford was 8.8% Black or African American. In 2023, the class of 2025 was 11.8% Black or African American. In that same year, the class of 2026 was 13.3% Black or African American and 10.3% Black or African American for the class of 2027. We are seeing basically fluctuations from 2024 now through the class of 2028 between basically 8%, 8.2% Black or African American, all the way up to 13.3% Black or African American. I'm focusing on Black or African American here because ultimately, let's be honest, affirmative action was created in the United States of America for Black Americans. First and foremost, it has obviously, the bandwagon has been jumped on by every other minority group over the decades, basically. Even to some extent, some argue it should be men in college admissions because how few men are going for your colleges now. But the overall ruling was not specific to any color. It was basically saying you cannot discriminate in college admissions based off of race. As I have said in previous videos, colleges have now interpreted the fullness of John Roberts' majority opinion to mean that they can consider students' racial experiences, but they cannot consider students' racial statuses. And so I would make the argument that the Haverford College leadership was crying wolf when they said that there was going to be a meaningful negative impact of the ruling on their student population, because they interpreted Justice Roberts' majority opinion to mean that they could definitely read, anytime they read about someone having to endure any sort of interesting life experience vis-a-vis their race, they now know that person's race. They are considering, quote unquote, that person's experience, but in the context of the race, and they got basically the numbers they wanted. They are roughly within the window that they've been previously, which is, 8% all the way up to 13 some percent Black or African American. And they got it again. They got it again without affirmative action formally. But are they actually practicing according to the law? Well, we don't know, because the interpretation that all of these colleges are using at this point has not yet been litigated, which is who knows how liberally they are interpreting Justice Roberts' words when they basically see someone writing about being a member of the Black Student Union in his or her essay and how they developed as a leader. Are they accepting that person because they're a leader, or are they accepting that person because they're a Black leader? I don't know if it says so in their files one way or the other, but obviously if they're accepting them as a Black leader, I would make the argument that they're against Justice Roberts' ruling. If they're accepting them because of their leadership, then that would be comporting with Justice Roberts' ruling. The issue is anyone who's a member or leader of a club getting the same bounce as the student in the Black Student Union? That's hard to dissect, because then you have to sort of subjectively dig deeper into who was accepted, who was rejected, and for what cause. And obviously it is a holistic process at a school like Haverford, but with so many data points, it is easier to obscure these very small changes in taking this student versus that student. What scores do those students submit? What grades do those students submit? We don't know all the answers. There has not been a precipitous increase or drop in any group of individuals based off of race. And that is interesting to me. And there hasn't been much change in any other way either, frankly. I mean, occasionally, if anything, again, Haverford just getting a huge number more applicants from one year to the next. 1,000 more applicants is a very big deal at a school that enrolls fewer than 400 students. That's a huge deal. They only got 6,300 applicants one year, then they got 7,300 applicants. That is big. And so for them to have that much more of an increase in applicants and very little fluctuation in terms of racial composition and even geographical composition, whatever they're doing inside of the actual admissions office is ultimately very tightly controlled, insofar as they're getting results that are very much in line with what they've gotten before. So they have not skipped a beat at Haverford, really, as it relates to racial composition. And that's what the profile shows. But congratulations to Haverford on getting 1,000 more applications from one year to the next. They did something right to create that outcome. Jess Lord, Vice President and Dean of Admission and Financial Aid, is someone who probably wants a raise. Now, if you want to get into Haverford College and you finished your Common App to Haverford College, and you want to know if it's as strong as possible and whether or not in its current condition your chances of admission to Haverford are impressive, inconclusive, or inadequate, you want my newest product, which is known as my pre-read. To purchase my pre-read, you should go to mypreread.com. Again, that's mypreread.com. Getting my pre-read now means having me review your entire application to Haverford, just like an admissions officer or admissions committee will review it later, and receiving by email no later than the time you reserve on my website, which again, you can access at mypreread.com, a comprehensive report highlighting what is working and what is not on your full Common App and your Haverford Common App supplement. If you've yet to submit your Common App, my pre-read may motivate you to make adjustments to it before your Haverford deadline. If you've already submitted your Common App to Haverford, my pre-read will prepare you for what I deem to be your likely admissions outcome at Haverford College, which is outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. If you'd like to work with me one-on-one throughout the entire college admissions process, go to my website, which is collegemeister.com. Again, that's collegemeister.com. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, and most importantly, stay stress-free throughout the entire college admissions process.